Good morning, Snapshots hockey fans. Welcome to another edition of Snapshots, a hockey development podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the great guys over at Mr. Lemon Stick Wax. Mr. Lemon Stick Wax is an American handmade, hand-poured wax for your stick. Gives you the right amount of tact, grip, and feel to be successful on the ice. Pick up Mr. Lemon Stick Wax, grip it, and rip it. It's also brought to you by the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Join a huddle today. Go online to the Fellowship of Christian Athletes and learn more about the programs they offer for prayer groups and huddles in your area. Today's topic is about buying hockey equipment for your kids. This can be the single biggest stumbling block, can be the biggest single bone of contention you have with your kids when it comes to playing hockey. And I get it. You know, your equipment, the gear your kid's going to be wearing is more expensive than some of the stuff our United States military wears. It's an issue. I get it. Especially with the amount of money that you pay for a stick these days. Holy smokes. But here are some ways you can understand where they can invest, you can save, you can make your child's equipment safe, comfortable, and appropriate for their level. Now, number one, fit matters more than price. Okay, if something is a more expensive model or version, but it doesn't fit properly, it's not probably a good fit, good ideal suit for your kids. Proper fit adds comfort, protection, mobility, and confidence. Avoid buying equipment several sizes too big just so that your kid can grow into it. Because if they are overwhelmed by the size of that equipment, it could lead to more catastrophic problems down the road. Have your child try their equipment on whenever possible, whether they're borrowing it from a friend, neighbor, or they're getting it from their association, or they're going to a pro shop. It's important that they feel that equipment on their body first before they move forward with a purchase. The single most important investment you're going to make is skates. Skates directly affect balance, stride, edge control, comfort, and enjoyment of the game. Children should feel properly measured instead of simply using their sneaker size. Too much space can cause instability, blisters, poor skating mechanics, an imbalance in their stride, and many others. So investing in skates that are good quality, maybe if you only purchase one thing over a summer, you purchase new skates because everything else works again. So they haven't had a huge growth spurt in their hands, in their head, in their shoulders, but they've had a growth spurt in their feet. And that's where you need to make the investment. And it's important to think about this not needing the stiffest or most expensive skate, but rather one that fits properly. And you can get high-end models that might be a year or two older that are on short supply, but available in your youth and junior sizes. The most common sizes that are sold out are between size 7.5 and about 10.5. Those sell out quickly. Those are the adult skates that, high-end players, high school, junior, college, potentially pro or adult players use first. So junior and youth sizes tend to be available. And if you can buy a model from a year or two prior, it can be their high-end model from that prior year, but they have a deep, deep discount. Helmets are not the place to guess. Okay, a couple of years ago, now I'm dating myself, but probably about 20 years ago, holy smokes, they had the Messier helmet. It was supposed to eliminate concussions. But what they've found through modern science is that any kind of protection around the head does not prevent concussions. Anybody who tells you otherwise is wrong. Concussions are caused by an interior movement of the brain hitting against the inside of your skull. And there's nothing that can prevent that. The only thing that can maybe science has shown have an impact on that is making sure that the player is properly hydrated so that there's enough fluid and water in their system and in their skull there that can prevent that kind of movement of the brain in the skull. So something to think about. Obviously, I'm not a doctor, however, so don't take my word as gospel. But any kind of helmet, make sure it's HEC certified, HEC approved. If it's a couple years old, some of those are now not allowed in gameplay. Some of your old Cooper helmets or CCM have simply gone outdated. So it's important that all helmets are adjustable and they grow with the kid. So it's important to make sure your helmet is certified, properly adjusted, and undamaged before they use it on the ice. Sticks. Whew. I get it, folks. These are expensive. Avoid paying for technology that the kids can't use, though. Something to think about. If the focus is on flex and kick point, and your kid is just starting out, they're not utilizing that technology. They don't understand how to take a slap shot properly, which releases that kick point to activate onto the puck. So it's just about whether something that feels properly in their hands, is not too large for their hands, and they'll be able to grip it. They're not too long a blade or large a blade where it's actually weighing them down as they skate. It's important that they use sticks that are not too long or even too stiff. Those are things to think about. But when they're at that between of ages of 5 to 11, kick point is really not that much of a factor in their shooting. So get something that they like. Maybe it's not their favorite player with the curve and all that, but it's important that kids able to use their backhand in addition to their forehand. So the curve, those big monster banana curves, actually is a detriment to their game if they want to be able to really utilize that backhand for both catching and receiving passes and shooting. Buy a stick your child can flex and control, not the stick their NHL player uses. Protective equipment. Here's some major fit points. Shoulder pads should protect the chest, shoulders, and upper back and collarbone without restricting movement. Elbow pads. I've actually seen players in high school hockey not wear elbow pads. That's pretty insane. It's like riding a motorcycle without a helmet, which is actually legal here in New Hampshire, which is interesting. But elbow pads should remain in place when the arm bends. So if your arm bends, your elbow pad should still stay snug on that elbow. Gloves should provide maximum wrist coverage without limiting stick control. Gone are the days of those long Hespler pads that are extending deep into the forearm. Usually your elbow pads now extend a little bit longer, so it meets the cuff of your gloves. Pants should overlap appropriately with the shoulder pads and shin guards. Oftentimes you'll see pants that are either too big or too small, and they stick out like a sore thumb in the ice. The high risers that are way above their shin pad, leaving an inch or two of area that can be hit by a puck, especially when they drop down to their knees or fall. And then they're too big where they're actually, affecting their skating stride, where the bottom part of that shin, that thigh coverage is now overlapping the knee protection. Neck protection. Now, this is a new one too. Most of the neck protectors back in the 80s and 90s were a stiff, rigid plastic that was around their neck and fixed on the back. Most of the ones we see nowadays are a shirt type. And what are the injuries that we see with neck protection? More often than not, we see a laceration rather than an impact injury. Impact injuries are very few and far between. So it's important to protect what is most vital, and that's those laceration injuries. So it's important to get a neck protection that maybe doesn't have the thickest pad, but is cut resistant. Players have the player when they're trying these things on. Maybe they bend, they twist, they squat, they simulate hockey movements so that they can get an ideal fit. Newer versus used equipment. Good candidates for your used equipment, which you can buy at, Play It Again Sports, get from a friend or neighbor, or maybe get from an organization, are shoulder pads, elbow pads, pants, shin guards, sometimes gloves, that don't have a ton of holes in them. And then for beginners, a beginner level stick, maybe something that's straight or with a modified small curve. Use caution when it comes to used equipment for helmets, skates, and then damaged and composite sticks. Anything that's cracked or torn, has missing pads, although you may save a few dollars, you're putting something at risk. Now, some areas where parents can save money. Ask your local program, ask former players, obviously brother to sister, sister to brother, brother to brother, sister to sister, all that kind of stuff passed down through generations in your family are good ideas, provided the equipment is still safe and usable. Compare prices online. This was a big model. Now, online equipment sales are huge. I am a former employee of the Ocean Ice Palace and the Ocean Hockey Pro Shop, which many of you remember on the East Coast as one of the largest distributors of hockey equipment. It was my dream job when I was 15, 16. I loved working in the rink. I loved packing those boxes, which may have arrived on your doorstep. And that was a fun gig for a kid obsessed with hockey. But those types of retailers are very few and far between. Now we have large chains like Pure Hockey, Hockey Monkey, things like that are really great places to get fair prices on equipment. Label every piece of equipment that has your child's name on it. You know, so many kids will have similar equipment, and if you lose a pair of elbow pads, which happens all the time, going in their bag after hockey camp, after hockey practice, things like that, it can be an expensive endeavor if you have a kid who's prone to losing things. Common mistakes parents make: buying skates too large. I see it all the time. It really affects their skating stride, and I know what you're thinking. It could save some money. Your kid might be in a huge growth spurt, but it's better off getting a lower end model that fits properly than a higher end model that you may suppose that you have a year or two with. Kids just grow. That's something that's part of life. Don't leave your wet gear inside the hockey bag. Make sure you air it out. That's a way to avoid bacteria and staph infections. And then, don't assume that expensive equipment will make your player better. The best things for your player are skills training, not just throwing them into a bunch of games, but doing stuff like strength and conditioning to increase their balance, coordination, mobility, also their ability to play with their head up. Their head up is everything. Learning how to accept and protect yourself with a body check or against a body check. When you buy new equipment, when you have your hockey bag set, kids, it's your responsibility to care for your equipment. It's not your mom and dad's. They've shelled out a lot to have you play hockey. So it's important that you care for that equipment like it's a vital part of your life, which it is. Remove equipment from the bag after use. Allow it to dry completely. Wash your socks. Wash your undergarment that is also potentially your neck protection. Wash your jerseys. Okay. Inspect your skate blade for rust or damage. Rust is a little bit more uncommon now with higher end skates, but it's important that you have a good sharpening and that the skates are ready to use on the ice. Check your helmet screws, cage clips, straps, skate laces, and then perform a complete fit check at the beginning of each season and at the end of each season as you go into your summer hockey programming. Closing message: the goal is not to give your child the most expensive setup in the locker room. Believe me, some of the best players I ever played with didn't have the highest end stuff and came from families that really, had to save their pennies to get there. The goal is to provide equipment that fits, protects them, and allows them to move more confidently. Invest thoughtfully in skates and your helmet fit. Save money where it makes sense. And remember that development comes from coaching, repetition, and equipment, not an equipment price tag. As my good friend Tim Kuhns always says, it's about the carpenter, not his tools. Thanks for tuning in today, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you check us out on Substack, the Hockey Development Hub. My YouTube channel is exploding. Thank you so much for tuning into that. Scoring Concepts on YouTube is now over 1,000 subscribers, and we are growing every day. Thank you. You'll see a ton of content on there. Also, make sure you check out my programs at www.scoringconcepts.com and at ne-wolveshockey.com. And this podcast drops every Tuesday at 8 a.m. on Spotify. Thanks for tuning in, and look forward to seeing you again soon.